Howdy folks, you're watching Deuce, and this is an Oculus Quest, actually it's a Quest 2 VR headset. I have recently downloaded a video game on this that allows you to shoot a Mosin Nagant. So today we're going to compare and contrast the virtual reality Mosin Nagant versus a real Mosin Nagant. Don't worry, these things are very durable, both the rifles and that headset. Because I'm talking about VR today, that means that this video will probably be pushed out to people that don't normally see my channel or a gun channel in general. But let me just tell you a little bit of my background. My name is Deuce because I own a Deuce and a half military truck. I have that down on a farm, not of course in my bunker here. I'm an avid collector of firearms, both new and old, going all the way back to the 1800s. And I've had my FFL, my Federal Firearms License, for purchasing my own private collection type stuff for going on 20 years. I've been collecting rifles or collecting firearms for over 25 years. Let's go ahead and jump into the game. I'm going to go back and forth between the headset and the rifles here, and you'll flip-flop back and forth with me. All right, into the radius, we have a big shooting gallery here, and right there on the bench there is my Mosin Nagant. Get out of the damn bench. Okay, here we go. So this is my Mosin Nagant here for the virtual reality simulator. First impressions, number one is that it has a bent bolt, not normal for a carbine length Mosin Nagant. It is made in the Ishii, I don't know how to pronounce that term, but the Ishii factory. It has that little triangle with the arrow in it. It's a 1929 year date, looks like, which was not normal again for a carbine length rifle. Normally it would have the 9130 length rifle for that, but this is a carbine because it has a graduated sight of 1,000 meters versus 2,000 meters. It's a correct color. That is that red shellac that they used in Russia. That is perfect for that. The brass reinforcing on the sling slots is very accurate for the date of 1929. Later on, I'll show you the differences they had later when they were in more of a wartime economy. But that is really cool. I really do like that. Now let's go ahead and flip over to the real Mosin Nagant. We can talk about that. So this is the sniper variant of the Mosin Nagant, the Mosin 9130. This was built in 1943, and it does have a bent bolt, just like the one in the Radius video game. And it works pretty much exactly the same. It's a little bit more clunky in real life. Now this also has the scope mount already on there. There is a PU scope available in the game, but I've not gotten to the level in the game to get one yet. They only made the sniper variant with the bent bolt for the full length rifle. As you can see, this is quite a bit more rifle than you saw in the video game. And to better show that here, the rear sight is graduated to, let me get that in the light there, to 2,000 meters versus 1,000 meters. There is no way in hell you're hitting anything with accuracy at 2,000 meters with this thing. You'd be lucky to hit a person at 500 meters with this thing. They were not super accurate. They really weren't. Now let's address this whole bent charging handle issue in the video game. They were only issued on rifles with a scope on it, which you can see the mount right there. And the scope would mount up as such. So we're gonna go ahead and take this scope off right now because we're just talking about the non-scoped version, because there is no reason to have a bent bolt here on a non-scoped Mosin Nagant. The straight bolt that is on 99.9% of all Mosin Nagants is faster to utilize, is easier to utilize, especially with gloves or in harsh conditions, or whenever there is a jam. This is much easier to manipulate versus the bent bolt here. You've got to curl your hand underneath here. You don't have nearly as much leverage to utilize this. Now I've gone through a very painstaking procedure to get this thing very, very loosened up and silky smooth. So it may appear to be very easy, but trust me, once you've put several rounds through this, this gets much, much harder to manipulate. If I had been consulted in making this video game, I would have said use a straight bolt on the Mosin Nagants until you upgrade to the scoped version. And then you get both the scoped version here, the scope onto the Mosin Nagant, as well as a bent bolt, because that's what they did from the factory. They would test shoot a normal Mosin Nagant, and if it happened to be a little more accurate than normal, they would swap out the bolt with a bent bolt and throw a scope on there. And that's basically how they designated a sniper rifle. There's no other difference between these two rifles other than that. If you're enjoying this video, hey, let me know with a like down below, and maybe even think about subscribing to the channel, because it was very difficult for me to figure out how to get footage from my VR headset onto my editing computer. I did figure it out, and it looks pretty damn good if I say so myself. Now here is the carbine that I have. This is an M44. This came out in 1944-ish, you know, back and forth a little bit. But M44s were made for the very end of World War II. It has an attached bayonet that, come on, Ariel, that slips right over the end. Yeah, there we go. So, watch your hand. So that is not what's on the video game. The video game has what I would consider a Model 38, which the Soviets, well, the Russians at the time, before they became true Soviet Union, the Russians decided they needed a short Mosin Nagant for clearing buildings and just close quarters combat, which the longer rifle is just not suited to go around corners very easily. I mean, look at that sucker. That's a lot of rifle to be running around inside doors. So the short one here, they made an M38, Model 38, that did not have the attached bayonet here. You could put one on the end just like a normal rifle, but it was not permanently attached like this. The one in the game is probably a 1938 or a 1938 model that was actually taken from a 1929 Mosin 9130 and then chopped down at the factory to make a carbine weapon. But to the best of my knowledge, they never actually made a sniper version of the carbine weapon. This little brass piece right here, this is protecting the stock from where the sling would go through and attach to the rifle. You got one in the butt as well right here. Now, during the best of times, they've been this nice brass cap to go over it, which is one over here too, and the sling, let me just show you how it looks like. You have the sling with the leather piece that goes through the stock, and you see that brass piece right there. And again, the same thing in the ass end of the rifle there, that little brass plate there. In a wartime economy, a wartime setting, that brass piece was apparently just too much to bother with. So in the handguard of the Mosin Nagants, they just put this little brass piece, actually I think it's just a piece of steel, I don't even know if it was brass, maybe aluminum, I don't know what it is. Something left over from the factory basically, just hammered it in, and that's there just to keep it from blowing out the bottom with the sling. And in the buttstock, there's nothing. It's just a hole stamped through it, and that is it. There was no protection whatsoever. They apparently never needed it, but it does look better with the protection on there. And if you look closely right there, there is the triangle with the arrow in it, very faint, but you can kind of see that, and that shows this was actually made in the same factory as the one in virtual reality. All right, let's set that aside here. Let's look at this ammo now. The ammo that the Mosin Nagant takes is a 7.62 by 54R, which you can see right there, which is pretty awesome. And it says right there, really small fine print, corrosive primer, which is also correct. Now to get the ammo out, you just kind of click your trigger and it just pops them out, which is not normal of course, but it's needed for a video game. Now the 7.62 is referencing the diameter of the bullet right there, and 54 is the length of the cartridge in millimeters. The shoulder, that little area between the neck, the top, and the big part of the body of the case is a little bit wrong here unfortunately, but it's very, very close. There is no head stamp that I can tell right there. I can see there's something kind of sort of there, but you can't see really anything there written. I'll show you what that looks like in the real world. But they do come in boxes like this. I've got a box on the desk right behind me. If you look right there, that is rimmed. The 54, the R in 7.62 by 54R means it has a rim on the bottom of the case. which is pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and load up a couple of rounds here. You just grab it and you pop it in there. Pop, pop. Nope. Wouldn't that be nice? Is that all of them? Yep, that's all I can fit in there. So it's 5 rounds. It holds 5 rounds in this little magazine, popping down here in single file. Yeah, go ahead and close up. And let's shoot some. Shoots like a dream. And it it jammed up a little bit like a real Mosin Nagant. Nice. That is just something. That is something right there. That's amazing. So here's a box of ammo that you can get. This is old Russian ammo here, and I can't remember how many are in here, 15 or 20 rounds, but there is a round right there. Let me use this Nemesis here, a 30-06 as a pointer. Okay, so you have the bullet right there, which is 7.62 millimeters across it in diameter. Then you have the neck right there, and then you have the shoulder right there, and the shoulder is a little bit more shallow in the game. I don't know why, maybe some sort of coding error or issue they had, so they couldn't make it as steep. And then you have the body of the case right there, which is pretty normal. And then the rim underneath is also perfect. So that's really neat. This didn't have much of a head stamp. Normally, a lot of ammo will have a head stamp on the very bottom of the case with all the information regarding that round. This is 30-06, whereas the old Soviet round here, that only has a few numbers there that comment on the date and the factory that it was made in. That's it. You saw me load 5 rounds in the video game, so let's load 5 rounds right now in the real rifle in the real world. So let's go ahead. Now this is going to be a little bit more clunky because I'm having it up here versus down in my lap, which would be normal, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right there. So we got 5 rounds right there, ready to rock and roll. Put that bolt down and go to town. You can easily empty the rifle in the real world by just undoing the bottom of the magazine. An option that is not available to you in the video game. Sometimes on the battlefield, you'll see people using clip loaders to load their Mosin Nagants. It is not very common usage because these are very clunky. It's almost worse to use a clip loader than it is just to load them by hand one at a time. Unfortunately, because it is a cool idea, but just does not work very well. They always get jammed up. There is a technique that you can sometimes work out, but for the most part, it is not very clean and easy. As far as shooting the Mosin Nagant goes, they're a joy to shoot. They're not super accurate. They are heavy. They are long. Typically, the triggers are very heavy in the real world. Of course, in the game trigger is very lightweight. That's a couple of ounces at most. And there's no click to give you a notion of where the sear has disengaged. There's no reset or anything of that nature. So you get almost no feedback from the trigger other than just the general vibration from the controller. And of course, the big loud bang and visual. But overall, here's a side-by-side between the real rifle and the virtual reality rifle there. You can see they are very, very similar. Even the red. They use the exact same red shellac that the Russians use for all of their weapons. The Russian SKS, same red shellac. So I didn't bother putting together any kind of like scoring or ranking or anything for how accurate the rifle is in the radius, but it is dang good. It is dang good. It is very fun. Does it replace the want or desire to shoot a real Mosin Nagant? No, of course not. Someone who races a real race car is not satisfied by a racing simulator. Someone who flies a real airplane is not satisfied fully by a flight simulator, even the Microsoft Flight Simulator. And someone who shoots real guns for fun is not fully satisfied by shooting virtual guns. The real Mosin Nagant is a lot more to handle. There are a lot more intricacies with the real rifle versus the virtual reality one. And one thing that you really do miss, the one thing that I really do miss between a real rifle and versus the virtual reality rifle is the smell. I know it sounds weird, but these old rifles, they have this certain smell, this cosmoline grease smell. Cosmoline is kind of a generic term for the grease they use to store these rifles in while they're being, stored in the bunkers of the Soviet Union and getting prepared for World War III, which fortunately never came. But that smell still lingers in the wood stock. The oil that you use in the metals to keep everything lubricated, there's a certain smell that comes off of that. The ammo, when you shoot, especially old ammo, it smells different from new ammo. And of course, the new ammo also gives off a scent when you shoot it. And it just, all that adds to the experience of shooting a real rifle. Of course, the recoil, you have the recoil, you got that into your shoulder there. And when it recoils, you feel it. You know you pulled the trigger on something with a decent amount of power. You don't get that in virtual reality world. So I guess the real conclusion is, does the virtual reality Mosin Nagant compare to the real one? In form and function as far as entertainment goes, sure. Sure, it's a great looking rifle in the video game. It is fun. All the actions are pretty similar to the real world. But comparing shooting a virtual reality firearm to a real firearm of the same type, there's no comparison. The real firearm wins every single time. But both the real firearm and the virtual reality firearm are fun to shoot, are challenging to shoot in their own different ways. Well, guys, that's it for me today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like and go up, subscribe. A lot more is on the way. If you have any comments, questions, show ideas, leave that in the comment box of the video. I try to answer as many of those as possible. And as always, you guys have a great day. See ya.